Hi, I'm Ellen Vandersleif, a pedestrian advocate. At some point in our daily journey, each of us walks. We walk from our houses to the bus stop, we walk from our cars to the office. Shoppers walk from the parking lot to the mall, and neighbors walk across the street to visit friends. Walking is the glue that holds our transportation system together. Walking gets you there.
I'd like to be independent, and walking proves to me that I can do things on my own.
Walking puts eyes on the street and helps keep neighborhoods crime-free.
I drive for my job, but I'm also a professional foot soldier. All my deliveries begin and end with a walk.
My kids walk back and forth every day from our home to the coffee shop. My kids learn the community by walking.
As a business owner on Belmont, every morning I walk the sidewalk to make sure that they are clean and safe. Also, I walk on the other side of the street to see if there's any changes in the neighborhood.
You know what I like about walking? No baggage. You don't need a helmet, you don't need a lock, you don't even need a parking space.
Portland is a city of walkers. In 1991, Portland was the second city in the United States to organize pedestrian advocacy. In 1994, Portland became the first city in the country to develop a pedestrian master plan. Today, Portland's transportation system plan gives priority to pedestrians in residential neighborhoods, business districts, and downtown.
Hi, I'm Mark Lear. Portland has a national reputation as a great city for pedestrians. In fact, in 2006, Portland was voted most walkable city by Prevention Magazine and the American Podiatric Association. But we can't stop here. Even in Portland, many people are afraid to walk because they don't feel safe crossing the street. Every year, an average of 216 people in the city are hit by cars. Last year, 8 pedestrians were killed in automobile collisions. Cars are more dangerous than pedestrians. When you choose to drive, you choose to take responsibility for a potentially lethal machine. However, pedestrians must also be responsible for their own safety. Most people who walk know what it's like to drive, and people who own a car also walk. Whether we are on foot or behind the wheel of an automobile, we all need to be accountable for our behavior and treat each other with courtesy and respect.
I was halfway across this intersection when a car struck me. Luckily, the car struck the walker first. I was laying in the middle of the road with buses and cars all around me, wondering if I was going to get run over by a car. I spent 2.5 weeks in a hospital and then 2 months in a care facility. And the driver told the police officer he thought my walker was a shopping cart.
Cars run this red light every day, and then they have the audacity to honk at me as they run the red light.
Sometimes I have to wait for up to 5 minutes for a car to stop for me in a crosswalk. But that's no reason for one to run into traffic. Sometimes you just have to wait.
As a courier, I'm trained to look for the unexpected, including pedestrians. The last thing I want to do is hit somebody.
I was almost across the street when a car making a left turn hit my leg and the tire rolled on my instep. The driver hadn't checked the intersection when she was turning and I wasn't injured, but my shoe flew off under the car and I had tire marks on my foot. All the traffic stopped and people were getting out of their cars to see if I needed help. I actually felt sorry for the driver. She was really upset.
Over half of all Portland residents limit their walking and biking because they don't feel safe in traffic. Over 2/3 of Portland residents limit their children from walking and biking to school because they don't feel safe in traffic. In 1970, 66% of Portland kids walked and biked to school. In 2006, only 15% of Portland kids walk and bike to school.
Hi, I'm Mark Kruger, Portland Police Bureau Traffic Division. Most pedestrian injuries occur in the crosswalk. So if we can make crosswalks safer, we can reduce the number of collisions between cars and people.
In 2003, the Oregon legislature passed an important new law to make crosswalks safer places for pedestrians. This law was updated in 2006. The law requires that when drivers are turning at a traffic signal, they must stop and remain stopped for pedestrians until they have cleared the lane into which your vehicle is turning and at least 6 feet of the next lane. At any other crosswalks not controlled by a traffic signal, whether marked with paint or unmarked, drivers must stop and remain stopped for pedestrians until they have cleared the lane in which you are traveling or into which you are turning and the next lane. Drivers must stop and remain stopped for students as you are directed by a crossing guard, and stop and remain stopped for a blind pedestrian using a white cane or a guide dog until the pedestrian is completely across the roadway.
Let's look at Oregon's crosswalk law first from the point of view of the driver and then from the point of view of the pedestrian.
Many people think of a crosswalk as a stretch of intersection marked with white stripes. However, Oregon's crosswalk law applies to all marked and unmarked intersections. Every intersection, whether it's marked with white lines or not, is a legal crosswalk. As you approach an intersection, be aware of pedestrians who are preparing to cross. If you see a pedestrian stepping off the curb, you must stop before the crossing. Stay stopped until the person has cleared your lane and the next lane. Now let's take a look at the law from the pedestrian point of view. Always cross at a corner or a marked crosswalk. Don't create a traffic hazard by unexpectedly entering the street. As you prepare to cross, look for oncoming cars. Make eye contact with the driver before crossing in front of a vehicle. Make sure you are visible to drivers. Wear bright clothing at night and during inclement weather to make sure drivers can see you.
Oregon's crosswalk law applies to all intersections, but there are two kinds of crossings that require extra caution on the part of pedestrians and drivers: multi-lane streets and turns at signalized crossings. Be aware of the specific conditions that make these intersections dangerous.
In multi-lane streets, pedestrians are often hidden from view by a stopped car. Drivers should never pass a car from behind that is stopped at a crosswalk. Instead, stop and stay stopped until the pedestrian has cleared the traffic lane and the lane next to it. Pedestrians, watch for oncoming cars in all lanes and make eye contact with all drivers. In a signalized intersection, drivers turning left or right must pay attention to cars, traffic lights, and pedestrians at the same time. However, many drivers in this situation forget to look for people in the crosswalk. Drivers, be alert and stop for pedestrians when turning at a signalized intersection. Pedestrians, pay attention to oncoming traffic turning in front of you, even when your walk light is green.
I spent more than 20 years working to improve conditions for walkers in Portland. But let's face it, as a driver, even I can get frustrated waiting for someone to cross the street. When you're timing all those traffic lights just right, it can be exasperating to have to lose the momentum and stop for a pedestrian. But that's just the point. There's something about being in a car. It makes it hard to empathize with people who aren't in a car, especially when those people are moving slowly. As drivers, we need to be aware of the extra emotional work it takes to connect with other human beings. Walking has its own psychology. As pedestrians, we're not encumbered by a ton or more of metal and glass. It's easy to take advantage of that freedom and cross wherever and whenever we want. But pedestrians have a responsibility to walk legally. As a driver, I've had people step out suddenly against the signal right in front of my car. It's scary.
I'm much more selfish when I'm driving than when I'm walking.
I'm embarrassed to say this, but when I'm driving late for an appointment, any obstacle, even a pedestrian, is an annoyance to me. But when I'm walking, I get annoyed if cars don't stop.
It doesn't matter if I'm on foot or behind the wheel of my truck. I always need to remain alert and active.
Every time I get the urge to jaywalk, I stop and think about what would happen if all the cars, trucks, and cyclists did exactly what they wanted when they wanted. Then I head for the nearest crosswalk.
Empathy is an important part of traffic safety. Physics is another. Let's take a closer look at one of the most effective ways of reducing pedestrian fatalities: driving slowly. It's simple. The faster you drive, the less time you have to stop, and the greater chance you will hit an unexpected hazard. The faster you go, the harder the impact will be, and the lower the chance of survival for the pedestrian you hit.
Small increases in speed dramatically reduce the survival rate for pedestrians struck by an automobile. A pedestrian who is hit by a car traveling 20 miles per hour has a 95% chance of surviving the crash. A pedestrian who is hit by a car traveling 30 miles an hour has a 60% chance of surviving the crash. A pedestrian who is hit by a car traveling 40 miles per hour will only have a 15% chance of surviving the crash. Small increases in speed dramatically increase stopping distances. If you are traveling at 25 miles per hour and see a pedestrian 100 feet ahead, you will be able to stop before reaching the pedestrian. But if you are traveling 35 miles per hour and see a pedestrian 100 feet ahead, you will not be able to stop in time.
Oregon's crosswalk law requires motorists to stop and stay stopped for all pedestrians. However, some elements of the population are at greater risk of being hit and killed by a vehicle. Children and senior citizens comprise 27% of all pedestrian fatalities and 28% of all pedestrian injuries. Let's look at the extra steps we need to take to keep our most vulnerable citizens safe on our streets.
Parents need to teach their children the golden rule of crosswalk safety. Look left, look right, look left again. Kids also need to understand that they are small and cars are big. Drivers can't always see children from behind the wheel of an automobile. But there are limits to how much we can teach our kids. The reality is that young children are going to make mistakes. They're going to dart out suddenly in pursuit of a ball. They're going to be distracted by a friend they see across the street. So it is our responsibility as drivers to assume that a child might run out from behind a parked car. It is our responsibility to slow down in our neighborhood residential and business districts so we can have a chance to stop in time. Nobody wants to hit a child, no matter whose fault it is. Senior citizens and people with disabilities are also at greater risk in a crosswalk environment. It takes them longer to cross the street, and they are more likely to be injured in a collision with an automobile. Many people have multiple disabilities that aren't always visible. It can be difficult to recognize a deaf person by sight, and not all visually impaired individuals use a cane or a guide dog. Drivers should be alert for seniors and people with disabilities at all intersections. Be responsible. Stop and remain stopped until a person who is blind or mobility impaired is completely across the street.
Pedestrians are good for business. People like to sit over here and watch the world go by.
Walking keeps my mind and body alert and active.
Walking is a great way to see broken windows or suspicious activity in your neighborhood. Having a foot patrol is a great way to prevent crime.
I don't drive, so walking is really important to my quality of life. And people with disabilities have every right to be out in the community living a quality life.
Walking is free, human-powered transportation. As a pedestrian, I don't pay for gas and I don't pollute the environment.
Portland is proud to be the nation's best city for pedestrians. A walkable city is a livable city. People who live and work in communities where it is safe to walk spend more time outside and interact more with their neighbors. A safe pedestrian environment reduces air pollution by encouraging people to get out of their cars. And if you want to stay fit and healthy, there's nothing easier or cheaper than walking. With your help, we can make Portland an even safer place for people to walk. If you're in your car, slow down and stop for pedestrians. If you're on foot, be responsible and don't enter the street until drivers have an opportunity to see you and slow down. Be courteous and respectful toward all road users. Keep Portland walking